These are the top 10 sneakers of 2024, and we're just diving right into it. I usually do honorable mentions, but in this case, honorable mentions are just like the first losers. I'm totally kidding. There's a lot of really great sneaker releases this year. In fact, there were so many I could have done like a top 100, and they're all amazing sneakers. But I selected these 10 sneakers in particular because I believe they had the largest impact on sneaker culture. They were the best overall design, and they're some of the most popular releases of the year. I don't know why these lists have gotten so contentious over the years. If you don't like someone's list, make your own list. It doesn't really matter. These are all based on personal opinions. So with that being said, these are my top 10 picks for the best sneaker releases of the year. Let me know your top 10 picks in the comment section down below. Oh, and of course, at the end of this video, I am crowning the 2024 Sneaker of the Year. Again, in my own opinion. And of course, if you want to grab any of the sneakers that I mentioned in today's video, even some that I don't, I've made sure to link them all through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Number 10, the Nike Air Max 1000. So I know I'm starting off this list in a way that a lot of you probably didn't expect. The Nike Air Max 1000 might not have been on a lot of people's top 10 lists. In fact, I haven't really seen it on anybody's. And maybe this is where my bias comes in, because I'm a huge 3D printer nerd. I love 3D printing in general. I love everything about it. I love the idea of 3D printing sneakers. So the fact that Nike has finally jumped into the game and released their own 3D printed sneaker is wild. And sure, this year Puma and Adidas both released their own 3D printed sneakers, but in my opinion, after trying all of the shoes that released this year that were fully 3D printed, the Nike Air Max 1000 is by far the best. First of all, this shoe is manufactured/printed by a company called Zellerfeld based in Germany, and their shoes are incredibly comfortable on foot and surprisingly durable. Not only that, the 3D printing process used on this sneaker is safer, it smells better, and honestly should last longer than really any other 3D printed shoes out there in the market. For those of you interested in 3D printing, the process that's used for the Nike Air Max 1000s is FDM printing, where they've got basically a nozzle that extrudes like a thin plastic material and melts it and then builds it up like a printer would if it printed over the same image multiple times. Whereas the Adidas shoes and Puma shoes were resin printed, which is a much more expensive process. It's a much messier process. Some people say it's a little bit more toxic. I'm not gonna lick either of these shoes or even print any of these shoes at my house, so it doesn't matter. But when it comes to actually scaling up production, I think FDM is definitely the way to go. And while yes, this shoe is very limited, like the Adidas shoe and the Puma shoe, I do think that if Nike wanted to mass produce this shoe, they absolutely could. In terms of design, the shoe is inspired by the Nike Air Max 1, and you can see that with the bone line running along the side of the shoe. I love the details on this sneaker. I love the colors that are used. You've got red, blue, orange, white, really any color that Zellerfeld prints. But in my opinion, the coolest part about this sneaker is that almost the entire shoe is 3D printed, but Nike actually added an air unit in the heel to give it that iconic Nike touch, making this by far the most futuristic pair of Air Maxes ever made. I've done many videos on this shoe, a full review. I wore it for a couple weeks and gave you guys my opinions after a couple weeks. And this is one of those shoes that I just love to wear. It's incredibly comfortable, it gets a ton of attention, and I think it's a really good looking pair of sneakers. And the reason this sneaker is on the list is because I really feel like this shoe has changed the game when it comes to 3D printed sneakers. Maybe not this shoe in particular, but Zellerfeld sneakers. It's not technically a new manufacturing process because Zellerfeld has been making shoes like this for years, but the fact that Zellerfeld is collaborating with a brand like Nike is huge. Number 9, the Travis Scott Jordan Jumpman Jack. This is one of those rare brand new silhouettes from Jordan Brand that actually did really well. Travis Scott is a prolific collaborator with Jordan Brand and Nike, but up to this point, he's only collaborated on established silhouettes. The Travis Scott Jumpman Jack, also known as the CJ1 T-Rex, which I just think is a much worse name, is his first all-new signature sneaker. This shoe is pretty much brand new from the ground up. However, it is inspired by classic Nike silhouettes and Jordan silhouettes that Travis Scott really appreciates. I mean, just looking at the paneling on the upper of the shoe, you can see details taken from Nike Dunks and Air Jordan 1s. And while in some ways, I guess you could consider this a mashup of sorts, I really do think it has its own identity and it stands on its own as a brand new silhouette. And of course, because it's got the Travis Scott name behind it and the colorways that have released so far have been very clean, the sneaker's been incredibly popular, which I'll be honest, I did not expect. I thought the first colorway of the shoe would sell out, but then the subsequent colorways would be nowhere near as popular, but for whatever reason, they're still selling and they're selling like crazy. I mean, the hype around this shoe at ComplexCon for what I consider to be the worst colorway of this shoe was wild. But hey, that's the reason the shoe is on the list, because the impact that it had on sneaker culture, the fact that Travis Scott could create a brand new silhouette that maybe isn't as good looking or as classic as the Air Jordan 1, but still be just as popular. Number 8, Nigel Sylvester's Air Jordan 4 RM. So I've talked about the Air Jordan 4 RM a bunch, and that's because I really genuinely think it's one of the best sneaker releases of the year. The Air Jordan 4 RM, also known as the Air Jordan 4 Resto Mod, is an updated version of the Air Jordan 4 featuring the same midsole and outsole tooling, but a completely redesigned upper. The idea behind the redesign is to create a pair of Air Jordan 4s that are perfect for bike riding and skateboarding. And so it makes sense that the first two colorways that released of this shoe were Nigel Sylvester collaborations, the Grandma's Driveway colorway and the Asphalt colorway. Nigel Sylvester, if you didn't know, is a pro BMX rider and has been collaborating with Jordan Brand since I believe like 2018. The reason that I have the Air Jordan 4 RM on this list at all, even though it's it's sort of a new version of an already released silhouette is because I actually think this is one of the best redesigned retro Air Jordan models of all time. I mean, think about it. Usually when someone mashes up or changes up a classic Jordan model, the public hates it. They just normally don't look as good as the original, so it's like, why change them up at all? But for the Air Jordan 4 RM, not only is it redesigned for a specific purpose, but it also looks great and it feels great on foot. Like, it feels like a modern Air Jordan 4. And I gotta be honest, the Nigel Sylvester collaborations are absolutely fire. I had the Asphalt colorway, which is actually selling for below retail right now, which you can check out through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen. I really want the Grandma's Driveway colorway, but I'm not gonna drop $600 on this shoe. It's a very expensive sneaker at the moment. Maybe the resale prices have dropped, I don't know. Check it out again through the YouTube shopping tab. But either way, it's a fire collaboration on a really great redesign of a classic silhouette. Number 7, the New Balance 1906R Action Bronson Rosewater. 2024 has seemingly been the year of 2000s running sneakers, and the 1906R specifically is one of the best versions of those shoes. But the reason the Rosewater Action Bronsons are on the list is because I actually think this is the best version of the 1906R to release this entire year. The shoe remains relatively the same, however it switches out the TPU overlays for a clear heat press, which does pretty dramatically change up the look of the shoe. While you still have some reflective hits, it's nowhere near as busy as the standard version of the sneaker. The rest of the upper is made up of wide green mesh with pink accents. You've got blue hits, green hits, orange hits. It's a very, very colorful but really well done pair of sneakers. Action Bronson has had some wild New Balance collaborations, but I personally think the 1906R is probably his best. Specifically in this colorway, I just think he absolutely knocked it out of the park. The 1906R in general is a great silhouette. It's comfortable, it's good looking, but the colors that he chose for this upper, the materials that he chose, the way that he changed up the silhouette, I mean, even the New Balance logo, he went with like a light blue towards the front of the New Balance logo and a darker blue towards the back. All these little details, all these little thoughts that went into the design process, I just love it. And out of all the 1906R collaborations that I've seen, this one definitely changes up the look of the silhouette the most, and in the best way possible. Number 6, the Air Jordan 4 Military Blue. This is a retro that we've been waiting for since 2012. We have not had a pair of these in 12 years. And being an OG colorway of the Air Jordan 4s, that's kind of surprising. With sneakers like the Fire Red 4s and the Bred 4s, we get them every 5 or so years. The Military Blues are one of those sort of uncommon retros. And I really think that the way that they retroed this shoe in 2024 was actually perfect. Jordan Brand gave us the Nike Air branding on the heel. They gave us some pretty decent leather on the upper of the shoe, some really smooth suede around the mudguard, and overall, it looks clean. The blue that they use, sure, is a point of contention for some people because some people don't think it looks exactly like the original, other people don't care. I personally don't totally care. I think it looks close and it's fine. I just like the way it looks on foot. Not only that, we don't get a lot of blue and white Air Jordans unless they're UNC Jordans. And while this blue isn't really UNC blue, I love the industrial blue look that they went with for this retro. I think it looks amazing, and I'm really happy to finally have a pair of these in my collection. It's simple, it's clean, it's one of the most popular, if not the most popular releases of the entire year in terms of resale numbers. If you look at places like StockX or GOAT, anywhere that really resells sneakers, it's usually towards the top of the list in terms of total sales. And I think the reason for that is because it's so clean and it's so wearable. So if you guys want to grab a pair of these for yourself and you haven't been able to grab one yet, make sure to check them out through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen. I'm sure they're selling for around retail at this moment. If you're watching this video a couple months down the road, they could be more expensive, but right now, you might even be able to find some pairs in stores still. Number 5, the Air Jordan 3 Black Cement. Yes, we've got another retro Jordan on the list that's basically unchanged from the previous iteration of the shoe. And honestly, I think that's okay. A lot of times I'm tempted not to put Jordans on a list because I feel like we've seen them a million times before, but if this list is truly based on impact and popularity, the Air Jordan 3 Black Cement has to be on the list. This shoe is one of the most iconic sneakers of all time. The Air Jordan 3 was a silhouette that kept Michael with Nike, and the Black Cement colorway is one of the original releases and my personal favorite. In fact, it's my second favorite sneaker release of all time after the Bred ones, and I do think that a lot of people feel that way as well. Now, in terms of the actual retro, this shoe does look almost identical to the 2018 pair. Maybe the shape of the upper is a little bit different, the tongue's a little bit different, and yes, the elephant print is not as consistent, but overall, it's very, very similar. And you know what? I'm happy about that. We've been getting so many reimagined shoes, and while there's nothing wrong with reimagined shoes, I just feel like it's nice to get a standard retro every now and then. And this is one of those shoes that I'm so glad they brought back when they did, and the fact that it's so widely available, like pairs are still sitting at my local mall, that's amazing. So I think if you want to grab a pair of these, not only can you walk into your local sneaker store and probably find a pair in your size, but you can also grab them through resale sites like through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen for under retail. When was the last time you could buy a pair of Black Cement 3s for under retail? 2024 is a great year for sneakerheads. I'm excited. I think for a lot of people, this shoe and the military blue 4s are probably interchangeable in terms of where they go on the list. I like both shoes a lot, but I prefer the Black Cement 3s, and that's why they made it to number 5 over the number 6 military blues, because I just like the shoe a little bit better. Number 4, the Air Jordan 4 Bred Reimagined. Originally, I wasn't gonna put this sneaker anywhere near as high on the list as I ended up putting it, and the reason for that is because I was like, it's sort of a retro of an OG, but it's not really, and it's definitely not my favorite pair of Jordans that released this year. But the more that I thought about it, and the more that I thought about what this sneaker actually was, I realized it kind of has to be up here. Sure, there was a lot of brand new Jordan silhouettes this year that were incredibly popular, like the Jumpman Jacks or the Air Jordan 4 RMs, but the Air Jordan 4 Bred Reimagined is a remake of an OG, and people don't usually take that very well. I mean, look at the previous reimagined sneakers. The only ones that really hit were the ones that only made minimal changes, like changing the color of the outsole. This shoe took one of the most important features of the original Bred 4s and switched it for something basically completely different. And if you didn't already know, that was changing out the material on the upper of the shoe from a black suede to a black tumbled leather. Yes, the colorway of the Bred 4 Reimagined is the same as the original Bred 4s. However, even though the colors are the same, the upper looks completely different, and that's because the nubuck that was originally used gave this sneaker a very matte look. Now with this tumbled leather, you get a little bit of a shine, and I think people actually kind of like it. This is not the first time that Jordan brands tried this. We've had satin versions of Air Jordan 1s that just didn't hit. We had the suede Royals that released last year that definitely didn't hit. We've even had patent leather Jordan 1 Breds that people thought were gonna hit but didn't hit either. This particular shoe really hit, and it's because the material that they chose was the right choice. And I think for a lot of people, they might prefer this release to the original. And if I'm honest, I might be one of those people. Obviously, if you gave me this shoe in the original release and said pick one to keep, I'd pick the original release because it's the OG, and that's a good reason to pick it. But if you're looking at pure wearability and current sneaker trends, this is probably going to be the more popular option. And it's kind of wild because yes, while the material change was a big deal, it was really the only thing that they changed on this sneaker. They kept the Nike Air branding, they kept the midsole white, they kept the red and the gray and all the details in the same place. The only thing that changed was the material on the upper. And it just hit. This was the biggest reimagining that I've seen recently that actually hit, and that's why this shoe is so high on the list. Number 3, the JTip Saucony Pro Grid Omni 9. If you had told me at the beginning of the year that a pair of Sauconys would have been number 3 on my list for 2024, I wouldn't have believed you. I have no problem with Saucony. I love the brand. I think they make great overall sneakers, but for a sneaker from Saucony to be this hyped, it's kind of wild. And a lot of that, if not most of it, has to do with the personality working on this shoe, JTips. JTips is an artist from New York who's recently blown up in the sneaker world because of his insane collaborations with Saucony. His shoes are incredibly colorful. They feature a wide range of materials and experimentation in ways that we don't really see often on new sneakers. I loved a lot of the collaborations that released in 2024, but a lot of them seem to kind of play it safe. JTips did not. He went for it, and he went for it hard, and I think it hit really, really hard. Not only is the Saucony Pro Grid Omni 9 just a good overall sneaker that comes with that sort of 2000s running sneaker vibe, it's also very comfortable underfoot, which makes sense because the name of the collaboration is To-Do List, and you're supposed to wear your comfortable shoes while you're completing your to-do list. But the paneling on the Saucony Pro Grid 9 is perfect for a collaboration like this, and JTips did his thing on this sneaker. I also should note that this is not JTips' only fire collaboration of the year. This is just my personal favorite, and I think one of the more popular collaborations, so that's why this is number 3 on the list. But you look at some of his other Saucony collaborations this year, and they're just as good. The impact that this collaboration had from an artist and a sneaker brand that people might not have expected to release something this crazy has been wild. In fact, it's been crazy. You guys love calling me out for saying that. I do say it a lot, but there's been a lot of crazy stuff this year, and this is one of those things. Number 2 and runner-up for sneaker of the year, the Adidas AE1. It's been honestly years since we've had a new basketball silhouette that really got everyone's attention. I'm not saying that there hasn't been really great new basketball sneakers released over the last couple years, but there hasn't been anything that took the sneaker world by force the way that the AE1s did. And there's a ton of reasons why that's the case. First of all, this sneaker looks amazing. I mean, it's different, it's futuristic, but it also features some details that I think people really like and are used to from Yeezy shoes. Not only that, the athlete whose signature shoe this is not only one of the most outspoken, but one of the most exciting NBA players out there. I think it's obvious, but for a basketball sneaker or a sneaker based off of some sort of sport to be popular, you need to not only have a great looking design and a great performer, but also you need an athlete with a personality who's at the top of their game. And this sneaker is the perfect example of all of that. I mean, look back at some of the recent newer basketball silhouettes that are not Nikes or Jordans or something like that. The people who really hit were the Currys and the Kawhis, and the reason they hit is because Curry was popping at the time. And the Kawhis not only looked decent, but they also released the year that he won the championship with that stupid 4 bounce that knocked the Sixers out of the playoffs. That sucked, but hey, gotta love Kawhi. So in order for a performance basketball sneaker to really hit, you need a little bit of everything, and the Anthony Edwards 1 is the perfect example of all of that coming together into an incredible looking sneaker. Not only that, the sneaker comes in at a reasonable price point, which is kind of wild when you look at other performance basketball sneakers from KD, LeBron, Jordan, that are all releasing between like $180 and $220. To get a shoe that performs almost as well, if not as well as those shoes in a lot of categories and probably better in other categories, for $120, basically $60 at minimum less than those shoes, and $70 if you get the low top version, is incredible. This shoe has been wildly popular, not only with basketball players, but with casual fans who just want to wear this shoe for everyday lifestyle wear, and you can see that happening because most of the colorways of this shoe tend to sell out. In an era right now where GR sneakers and even some Jordan releases are sitting on shelves. The Adidas AE1 or the Anthony Edwards 1 has been one of the most impactful sneakers in 2024, and while yes, the first colorway did kind of release in 2023, although very, very limited and the general public didn't get it until 2024. Although yes, technically the first colorway of this shoe did release at the very end of 2023, but it was limited and the general public couldn't get it, so I guess it's kind of a 2023 release in a way. This shoe has been one of the most talked about and iconic sneakers of the entire year, and I think people will remember this as being one of the best new performance basketball sneakers from any athlete. Basketball athlete. I don't think a tennis star would release a basketball sneaker. They could, but they probably wouldn't. But finally, we have made it to the #1 spot, the sneaker of the year. And that sneaker, of course, is the Futura Nike SB Dunk Low. I mean, let's be real. If you've seen any of my top 10 videos about my favorite sneakers of the year, or the best sneakers of the year, or whatever, you knew this sneaker was gonna be #1. And while this year is different from other years where there's been like a unanimous sneaker of the year, like for example the Omni Air Jordan 3s, the Futura Nike SB Dunk, in my opinion, is by far and away the most impactful, one of the best looking, and quite possibly one of the most iconic sneaker releases of the entire year. This sneaker is not only the perfect sneakerhead sneaker, but it's also a great sneaker for the newer generation. It has so much sneaker history built into it because of the collaborator and also the silhouette itself, but it's also the kind of sneaker that you can wear in 2024 and it still looks fresh, it still looks new. Futura and his brand Futura Labs are one of the most iconic collaborators on Nike SB sneakers of all time. When you think of those unattainable dunk collaborations, Futuras are usually near the top of the list. But this sneaker didn't fall into the trap of being popular just because people are nostalgic for it. People like this shoe because of what it is today. The overlays on the upper of the shoe feature Futura's art printed onto it, and it creates this beautiful sort of summery multicolored look. The printing is asymmetrical, so the right shoe is different from the left shoe. In fact, the right shoe also has this yellow stitching detail that's only on the right shoe for some reason, not on the left shoe, and it's details like that really make me love this sneaker. Not only that, but as someone who grew up loving Nike SB Dunk lows, having that Futura Laboratories logo on a pair of Nike Dunks in my collection is one of those like mind-blowing moments. It's how I think a lot of people probably think about the Wu-Tang Dunks, or maybe the undefeated Air Jordan 4s whenever they release next year, if they release. It's that feeling of finally being able to obtain the unobtainable. But where this collaboration surpasses all of those other collaborations is that this is not a redo, this is not a remake, it's not a retro, this is a brand new design with that same iconic Futura feeling to it. They could have very easily re-released one of the classic Futuras or even had a widespread release of the off-white Futuras that dropped a couple years ago, but they didn't. They decided to go for an all-new design that I absolutely love. And even if this design wasn't a Futura collaboration, I still think it's a really great looking sneaker. It's the use of color like the overlays and the multiple colors on the sock liner of the shoe. It's the double color laces. It's the fact that the shoe is asymmetrical, which I've already talked about. There's so much about this sneaker that is so well done. And to top it all off, it's a Futura Laboratories collaboration. I mean, hey, I get it if this is not your favorite sneaker release of the year, but you can't deny the impact that this shoe had on sneaker culture, and for people who are big Nike SB Dunk fans, this is probably a grail. And that's why I picked the Futura Nike SB Dunk Low as the sneaker of 2024. If you made it to this point in the video, let me know in the comment section down below what your favorite sneaker release of 2024 was. I would love to know. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all in the next one.